Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was just jotting down some notes. I know we said we wanted to keep it pretty informal and stuff, but I was just driving back from New Jersey this morning and was kind of thinking of some ideas of things, maybe even just touch on. But I just figured we'd roll through some intros of ourselves first, and then maybe if we just want to, I know last time we chatted, we talked about some of our coaching philosophies and coaching styles, just who we've worked with. So I think it could be kind of a cool topic of discussion if that's something we want to roll with.
Yeah, for sure. I had no. I don't want to say I didn't have a plan. I did have a plan. Thought
Yeah,
about
yeah.
just like
There you go.
like the general intro, and then like just basic training stuff.
Yeah,
Whatever. Kind
that sounds good
kind
to
of
me.
like extend on what we talked about on the phone, just
Yeah,
on a
I
hot
think that's
mic.
perfect. I think that's perfect. Like you said, we'll kind of find some tidbits as we go along, and you know, each one will probably get better as we go. So it should be good.
Yeah, for sure. How long do you have?
I have until we're done. I don't really have any. My soccer team's off today, which is nice, and I don't really have any pressing issues going on. So I got pretty much probably. I mean, like I said, however long it takes. But normally, if we do it like the 10-ish time, I'll probably have like an hour and a half, which I think will be plenty of time for
Oh
us.
yeah, that's plenty. Like when I did the one with Coach Burr from the Pirates, I think it was only like 30. So it was like 25 minutes, but
Yeah,
um we'll have a little bit more to talk about, but I still think like that 30-minute window is like key. It might run a little bit longer just because we'll clip some stuff, but
yeah,
um Kyle, has it started recording? It
yeah.
can
It's
record.
live.
Okay, and then we can clip whatever.
I
We just
listened. I listened to a podcast this morning on the way in. Actually, I've been listening to it. It was with Jocko and Huberman. Five
really
hours long.
what 5 hour podcast?
5 hour
Was it good?
podcast. It's
It
very
has no
good,
audio.
but it's
That's a big
like it. I mean, it was a book though. It's like from when Huberman first started, what he grew up, and like talks about all his stuff he's learned at when he was in school, and now he's working at Stanford. Like, it's crazy. I was like, dude, it's 5 hours. Like that's a dedicated show right there. And he was very high level and stuff he does. Like he can dive in the realms a little bit deeper. But it's a good. I'll share it with you. It's a good podcast if you have. It'd be good to do in your lunges. You can do it. You probably banging
yeah.
out like a week and a half, but it's good. It's a good podcast.
How far does that drive from New Jersey to Nova?
I drove from North Jersey today, so it was about an hour and 35 minutes. Actually, not too bad.
Oh,
It's
that's
all
not bad.
highway, so it's money.
Did you guys play there over the weekend?
Did we play? Yeah, we had a game yesterday. We tied with Delaware, so pretty good match. We lost to BC last week, 2-0, but they kind of scored. I mean, they scored a nice goal, and then they had a penalty kick. We had a handball, which was
Oh,
kind of tough. And then yesterday they scored one for half, and then we answered, and then it was just 1-1 to kind of wrap the game. It's crazy they don't do any overtime or penalty kicks. That's new for this year, which I don't love. I was like, you can't do penalty kicks just to get a win or a loss, but now they'd rather go 1-1 and move on.
yeah, they're going to that like professional approach where so it's like, okay, we'll end in a draw. And I'm like, it takes an extra 30 minutes to do either method. Like you can do two 15
No
minute
doubt.
or you can do a shootout. Just do
I'd rather,
something.
I'd rather just go shoot out, especially in female soccer. I think you're not going to get as many goals or opportunities at least either. So I would like to see at least a shootout kind of make it exciting.
Yeah, because I mean,
But
if you go another two 15-minute periods, you might got 3 shots on goal. You're not creating a lot of chances.
no doubt, no doubt. So yeah, so it was a good weekend for us. Regroup, then we play again Tuesday, Thursday. Or Tuesday. I mean, I Friday or Thursday, Sunday again this week. So that's our normal schedule. Quick turnaround Thursday, Sunday. It's pretty normal until we get into conference play. We'll start doing maybe every other Thursday with a Saturday, which would be cool.
Yeah, be sick.
So
That's
too
like the
bad.
setup. That's how we are because we go Thursday, Saturday, but then it's like middle of the year we start to throw in Tuesdays, which Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is tough. Like next week we go. This week we only have Thursday, then next week's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and I'm already not looking forward to it.
Nah, it's a lot. It's a lot for the players to handle too.
Yeah, yeah. Um, which is kind of like we can talk about that, but I'll go ahead and spit a little bit of an intro,
Mm-hmm.
just for like the Max Everett
Yeah.
deal, and then I'll intro you, and then you can just kind of talk about yourself, give like a background stuff, and then I'll go after you. That's cool.
I'll go pretty deep into a background for this first one, just to kind of see where I've come from, how I got into the coaching realm, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right,
Awesome.
we'll get started. So, all right, this will be for you, Kyle, so you know when to clip it. So, no, I think it looks good how it is. What the? I like. Oh, so whoever's talking. Okay, are you sure? Well, yeah, I meant like I'll cut it like as in words like you're about to start. Okay, cool. All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Max Effort Athlete Network podcast. I'm your host, joined by my co-host, Colin Masterson. I'm Tyler Tredway. Colin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them about yourself, about your background, how you got started, and what you're up to.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Tyler. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Love being a part of this podcast. We've kind of been brainstorming it. I think it's almost been like 3 months now. We've kind of been chatting, DMing. This kind of all came organically through Instagram, which is, one of the positive sides of social media. But my name's Colin Masterson. I went to Ridley High School in Philadelphia, PA, stayed very local, played college football. From there, I transitioned into an accounting role, which many people probably wouldn't believe. It feels like many moons ago, but I was an accountant for about 3.5, 4 years. Knew I had an edge to kind of work in sports, grew up in sports, wanted to get back into it. So took an internship down to the University of Maryland, did that for about 9 months with a great staff down there. And then was fortunate enough to come back home with an opportunity at Villanova University. Came in there as an unpaid intern, went on to become a paid intern, and then eventually became full-time. So I'm entering my 5th year there. I've worked with a slew of teams, came in with just football, and then I've transitioned in working with more female sports now. So I work with women's lacrosse, women's soccer, softball, and I also have the golf team. And then summers here, because we have a different layout, I also work with the football team throughout, most of June and July. Transition to August, I spend most of my time with the women's soccer team. So that's just a high level background of kind of where I've been at and kind of where I'm going. Like I said, this fall I'll be working with the women's soccer team, also training other teams, and then transition to the spring. I got 3 in-season teams, so my schedule gets a little bit busier with the softball, women's lax, and golf. So busy here at Villanova University, but fortunate to have such a great opportunity to work with the great staff here, and fortunate enough to kind of be partnered with you guys at Max Effort and get this thing running here.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you touched on, we kind of met via Instagram, shared a lot of the same philosophies. And I recognized really early that you're very intelligent. I love your philosophies around training. And that's kind of how we, progressed the conversations. And we started to discuss like the possibilities of how we could intertwine you with the Max Effort. And I was like, you have a lot of good ideologies that I think get lost, especially in youth athletes. And it was an opportunity to kind of like bring you in and do some content. And I'm excited to learn from you and, have these conversations bi-weekly whenever we end up doing them. But yeah, I think they're going to be super valuable no matter what level of athlete. So we'll just dive into it. So like, what is your favorite part about working with not necessarily Villanova or the sports that you do, but more so that age group, the late teen, early 20, probably don't. What do you love about that? What are the advantages and disadvantages of that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective. Working with that age group, obviously they have a better knowledge of, the strength and conditioning. They maybe have a little bit of an intro where they've touched it at the high school level. But for me, it's just these kids, I think, are starting to care about it because they're realizing how much of an advantage it can play in their sport. And it's not just playing your sport anymore. You're seeing the kids that are getting recruited. They're well-developed athletes now. They're obviously playing multiple sports, but they train at a high level. They come in, usually have some sort of training age. So for me, it's the fact that the kids want to be there. rather than their parents kind of sending them somewhere. So I think that's the biggest advantage you'll get is kids wanting to be present in that moment while you're training them versus rather than be like, hey, mom and dad are using this as kind of daycare for the first, half hour, 45 minutes. But at the same time, the energy level at that younger kid group can be great. Like I said, working at the college level sometimes, it does become, day in and day out, the kids can get lax because it becomes a full-time job, obviously, at the college level and sometimes even the high school level, depending on what, level and what school you're playing at. So there can be a burden sometimes. And, you've run into burnout with some of these high school kids that transition to college that, played so much, travel teams, this, that, other thing. So I think sometimes, before you dive in and want to get super involved with all these kids, you got to take a step back and look at the approach of seeing how much is on their plate, and maybe take a step back and say, hey, can we eliminate something so we can kind of throw some of this, strength and conditioning aspect into it to hopefully, mitigate some of the injuries and honestly get these kids ready for long-term athletic development, because that's basically the main reason why we're here, because their best ability is going to be their availability. If they're not available to play and they're on the sidelines, then they're not doing us any good. So I would say that's probably my biggest thing is just, the kids are being present. And then, maybe the biggest disadvantage sometimes is, it does become a full-time job. If you don't love it, it can become, more of a process that the kids, aren't totally bought into, and they may lose interest at times. But, that's the art of coaching. Sometimes I think you have to be, a good coach and kind of find which kids love it, which kids don't love it, and how you get those kids that don't love it so much to kind of buy in and be like, hey, you know what, I need this for the benefit of my sport. So I would say that's more of a high level response for me. Likewise, obviously you work with those age groups as well. So I don't know if you mind speaking on kind of what you love about it and maybe some, pros and cons of working at age group as well.
Yeah, so mainly work with the high school level athletes. Um, they definitely come in at all different levels. They have different training ages, but you can't just assume that everyone's training age is zero, because you have, especially kind of the suburbs that we live in here in Columbus, a lot of kids are getting that private training. So they come in with a decent level of knowledge. And then you'll also get the kids that, they probably don't have those luxuries for whatever reason. They play a couple other sports, or their family doesn't have the means to do it. So you have to kind of set the standard of where you want your program to be. Okay, well, if we realistically have a shot at being a championship caliber team, then you need to deconstruct it and look at, okay, well, I have these players at this level and these guys at this level. So how can I raise the level of uh the lowest athlete to kind of create that new mean? And I think, like, having an understanding of training and athletes and sports in general will be a good way to gauge it. So, like, a real life example, I work primarily with soccer, right? So we get guys who are at their senior year who have had 4 years of training with a strength coach, a soccer team, and everything. And they're kind of like up at the top. Like, they're not all at the same level. They're not all high level, but they all have a great understanding. And then you get these freshmen, sophomores in who might have never played the sport before. It's their first time coming out. Their training age is zero, but you have to all come together collectively. And I think that is where a lot of people struggle, because there's no cookie cutter program for that. Um, when you're getting a kid in who has terrible um, mobility, terrible movement patterns, things like that, they're going to need a little bit more individualized attention than a senior who can back squat 135 flawlessly, with good range of motion and good mechanics, everything like that. So I think just kind of understanding what the needs are and how you can meet those. So some guys, they just need just basic GPP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Walk with weight, carries, pull ups, scaling things to what they're available to do, because then that allows them to be included in the program. I think a lot of times, especially at the smaller schools, kids will get kind of tossed by the wayside because, oh, they're a freshman. They might not be at the level of athleticism as a junior or senior. So it's like, okay, well, we'll kind of stash them away and develop them. But that's unfair to their growth and development, because they never kind of reach that potential just because they were neglected from a young age.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to dive on 2 points. I think, and the first one I kind of want to talk about was just some of these kids that come in and have had strength coaches or performance coaches or someone, maybe it's their dad, and they have bad tendencies. And that's something you were kind of talking about, like, hey, they don't have great mobility, or their dad has them squatting 315, but their mechanics look terrible. I think we run into that issue a handful of times more with the football side of things, because you get these kids and they put out their recruiting numbers. Hey, I bench, 275 pounds, I squat 500 plus. And it's like, well, let's break it down to base level, because we have 4 years with you usually to develop you. So let's check out your mechanics, see how you're looking. Because a lot of the guys, they come in and honestly, it doesn't look great. And there are guys that stand out, right? You have some of those thoroughbred guys that come out and they're strong, their mechanics are really good. So that's one of the issues that, you touched on and alluded to. But I think there's sometimes where we're kind of like scraping back away and say, hey, let's take 2 steps backward to hopefully take a step forward. And then another thing to touch on was, I think COVID for us at a university, and nationwide, was no longer had access to a gym. So allowed us to get very creative with, hey, what are some body weight things we can do? Can you put on a backpack? Can you go down to very, very base level? Some kids may have one kettlebell, they may have one band. And like you said, it's kind of making it that functional training, you want to call it, but base level, because you said not everyone has the same availability to a gym or equipment, to get creative again and kind of break it back down. And we've seen kids that have come back post COVID that maybe had, nag injuries, or their technique was poor, and they actually needed that time off to kind of regenerate their body and then be able to get back into things. So I think that's one thing you have not seen at the high school level is these kids play sports all year round. From, they may go soccer in the fall, and then they may do swimming and diving, and then they go play something in the spring, and then it's summer tournaments all year round. It's like, well, when are you giving your, body a chance to grow? Well, my mom and dad say, I need to be doing this. And the kid's like, well, I haven't seen any gains, or I'm not growing. It's like, well, you're probably not sleeping. You may be overtrained. You're not eating proficiently. And that's a big thing of the education piece I think we need to get out there for kids is, yes, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but are you able to step back and kind of monitor, hey, what are my stress levels? What am I applying to sport? Am I allowing myself to recover? I have academic stress. So taking a step back, writing it kind of out on paper, and be like, hey, am I giving myself the ability to grow? Because I'm doing all these stressors, but I'm not taking the time to kind of, relax and let the body have its normal adaptations.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that stems from you put this pressure on kids. I think most of the athletes I coach at a Division I school, so most of the kids have that expectation that they're going to go to the next level. And you're crammed into a 4-year window where you can really showcase your talent, get better, and just show those college coaches what you're capable of, and that you deserve a shot at the next level. So I think a lot of times what I see is kids who play, maybe they're only a 2-sport athlete, but they're playing soccer year round. And then they're adding in, they got a speed coach, they have a soccer skills coach, they got a strength coach. And it's like, man, you have practice twice a week, plus you're seeing all these guys, you're going at it 6, 7 days a week, and you're going for 2, 3 hours at a time. Like, when are you giving your body time to recover? And they always think like, I have to be my final product today. And it's like, you need to scrap that mentality of, I have to be the best version of myself today. And it's like, I need to know what I need to be the best version of myself, but I need to understand the steps to take to get there. And I think that's something that you kind of touched on, is these steps of how you can kind of reverse engineer where you want to be, and then take a bigger picture look at it. Well, if I want to be here, I'm going to need to recover and rest and take this time to focus on my body. Maybe that means I need to take a step back, and I can't be back squatting twice a week or doing speed squats and stuff. Maybe I just need to work on my movement patterns. And I think that gets lost a lot because kids put pressure on themselves to be, this high level athlete, and be the best version of them as they can be that day. And it's just like, it's not sustainable long term.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's a total shift because of the social media. We allude to this. We're the same age, being 30 years old. We didn't grow up with as much exposure to social media, but you're seeing these kids now that, hey, I'll be honest, I was a late bloomer, right? I wish I had a couple extra years to play college football when I did, because I feel like I really could have made a bigger impact. But by the time I graduated high school, I was 155 pounds. My sophomore year in college, I'm 175. I mean, there's kids that are graduating at 205, 210 that play my, same positions. Like, man, if I was only that size, but it just was the cards I was drawn. I happened to go play Division III sports. I had a successful career, but again, if I could have had some of that growth or had some of that, you know, I guess, education of what it took to get strength and conditioning. Like you said, we were kind of ripping our pages out of magazines to find out, hey, what's the best exercise? Because I want to look like that guy on the cover. Well, it's 4x15 bent over rows. It's 4x15 pull-ups. And now there's so much education out there. But is it too much of a stimulus that kids are saying, like you alluded to, it's, hey, I got this exercise from this guy. I got this exercise from this guy. And there's no formal plan, to holistically kind of hone in all your stress. And they're just kind of picking and choosing what they want to look like that one person, rather than be like, hey, I need to take, a all hands on deck approach to kind of analyze what I'm doing, to kind of put that perfect plan in place. And obviously, again, things are going to adapt. Like you said, you're playing on multiple teams, you're playing multiple seasons, but being able to adapt and allowing yourself to say, hey, you know what, less is more sometimes. I need a day off. I need to recover. I need to go on the beach and just spend some time with family, whatever it is, to allow yourself to regenerate and then hopefully attack the next season healthy.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to, dig up any of your secrets, but can you talk about that? Because I have a unique way of kind of doing my programming, and you kind of talked about like specific programs because we talked about it. We used to just go online and just find stuff, and it's like, okay, well, this looks like a decent exercise. I saw this guy doing it in this magazine. I saw this guy doing this on whatever website, and it's like, okay, I'm going to throw these together, and it's not really a plan, but you're in there, you're working, and you think that you're doing something, and all you know is you're working hard, but you're not
Right.
really in a plan. So how do you structure kind of your hierarchy of needs for athletes when you're designing your plan? And again, I don't want to give away all your secrets for
No.
your programming, but I have a way of doing mine, and I'll share those, but I want to get your thoughts on that first.
Absolutely. I'll be very transparent. Like I said, it's there's no secrets. I work with a great staff here at Villanova, and I was fortunate to learn from those guys. And we've kind of put our minds together and built a pretty high level approach, we believe, and also using other coaches in the CAA. That's the conference we play football in. But like you said, the first thing we kind of want to do is reverse engineer the sport. So hey, what are the needs analysis of your sport, right? If it's soccer, how does it differ from lacrosse? If it's baseball, how does it differ from soccer? So looking at that at a high end is like, hey, what are the certain demands of my sport that I need? Is it linear running? Is it changing direction? Is it speed and power? Is it more endurance based? So trying to draw out that big picture first. We're a heavy field based team. We're field based, I would say, university. So we do a lot of stuff on the field with our teams where we can educate. So we do a lot of speed training. Usually trying to do 2 days a week speed training. We try and always work an ACL day, always try and work a max velocity day. So that's just an education piece alone from kids. And I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, in 16 weeks, I'm going to teach a kid to run perfect form or get his 40 time down to a certain number, right? We try and time 10-meter flies, maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the semester. We'll do vertical jump testing to kind of see, what kind of power it will develop. We work on the broad jumps. We try and move in different planes of motion. And then when we go to the weight room, we're trying to say, hey, what are the strength exercise that I need to hit? What are my big rocks? Because we get, an hour in there, but really it's 45 minutes. After you do the warm up, you explain all your blocks, and you do a breakdown with the team or you do a cool down with the team. So what are my big rocks that I want to hit? And if I were to say, hey, high level, let's look at the big things I want to hit. It's going to be some sort of push variation, whether it's a vertical or horizontal push. It's going to be some sort of pulling variation in there, whether it's a vertical or horizontal pull. We're always going to have to do some sort of hinge. So a hinge dominant exercise where it's, coming from the crease of the hip. We're going to do some sort of squat variation, whether it's coming single leg, so unilateral versus bilateral. So single leg versus double leg. We always want to work the core and upper back. And then, believe it or not, we don't do enough of it here, and I wish we did, but we should be doing some sort of neck training for the kids. So I think if you can break down and you can kind of fill all those buckets throughout your program, as long with the stuff outside on the field, I think you're able to, put together a pretty full program for the kids. And like I said, usually it's 2 days a week here. Sometimes it's 3 days a week in the weight room. So you can get a little bit more specific with some of the stuff that you want to do. And as the semester goes on, we're trying to peak these kids, whether they're in season or out of season. Like, if you look at an in-season team right now, so I have soccer, they're going to have a 16-week season, potentially, I guess, starting with fall camp. So it's very general in the beginning because they got to play right away. They get 4 weeks of build up, 3 weeks of build up. They got to play right away. So I can't throw a ton of stress on them in the weight room because they have so much stress on the field coming from. And then basically we'll wave them through the season. So I usually do some sort of, deadlift variation or some sort of squat variation with them. That's going to be our main lower body exercise. And then upper body, it's going to be some sort of horizontal press or vertical press. That'll be our main upper body exercise. And like I said, we'll wave them through a 4-week cycle, and then sometimes we'll go into an 8-week cycle based all off percentages. And all we're trying to do is, keep these kids healthy and keep them stronger throughout the season. So it's not a linear periodization. It's more of an undulating periodization where it's able to, hey, we kind of build up, drop it down a little bit, build up, drop down a little bit. So we're constantly working in the upward plane, upward trajectory to try and get stronger throughout the season. And obviously, we want us to get faster throughout the season as well. So, and then, similar but a little bit different for an out of season team, we look at like a team like women's lacrosse. They're going to come in again a 16-week semester, but they have fall ball where they want to compete. But again, it's not always about winning and losing at that time of year. It's more about development. So I can kind of get into the nuances and do a little bit more, heavy lifting right away because there's not going to be playing games that matter as much because no one really cares about, I would say the fall season. We're all trying to win in the spring there. And they'll play, I think it's a 5-week fall season where we're going to try and, do some of the things that I would do with them in season. And it's just a test, it's really trial and error. I'm not reinventing the wheel, but it's trial and error. What works, what doesn't work with the kids, and look for some feedback. Like, hey, did you like doing the deadlift 2 days before a game? Or would you rather do another movement? What made you guys feel good? Did you feel sore? So it's a little bit of a trial and error period. And then those last 4 weeks from Thanksgiving to Christmas is really our true strength phase where we get 4 weeks of kind of uninterrupted training for those kids where we can really get after with them. And that's where we're going to really throw in a lot of stress for them with, heavy eccentrics, isometrics, whether it's, like I said, a back squat, an upper body push, some sort of variation. But that's where we're going to load them up pretty good. And that's where we're going to try and get some of our testing numbers for them. That way, when we go into the spring, right, and they are going to compete, we've kind of already run through what the fall would look like. And again, we'll make those changes based off how the kids feel. But now when we run into the spring, like I have almost a 16-week blueprint of where we've been and now where we're trying to get to. So like I said, it's not giving you, I would say the X's and O's of everything we do, but a high level, I say, kind of gives you, hey, you can fill in all those points of the push, the pull, the hinge, the squat, the core, the upper back, and then some of the field work stuff, you're going to have a pretty good program for yourself. So I think most kids, if they could kind of think of a foundational exercise that fits in those buckets, they're able to build themselves a pretty good program. And I know I'm getting a little bit long-winded, but if you look at it, we really come from an education base. I know you touched on this earlier. I'm not going to give kids exercises that they can't perform at home because at the college level, they go home for December. So lacrosse goes home for December. They come back in January. They got to play. Well, they need to train those 5 weeks because we're about to play. So I can't give them exercises that I expect them to do, but they don't have access to it. So, hey, we need to be smart about our programming, give them something and educate them. So when they go home, if I'm saying, hey, you got to do a half kneeling landmine press, they know exactly what they need to do. If they don't have access to a landmine, they know to use a kettlebell or a dumbbell to press overhead. So it's a big education for them. Like I said, not every kid loves the weight room, but we got to educate them because they need to be prepared for sport when they come back. So there's, the programming, I would say high level without getting to like percentages and sets and reps. But if you want me to dive into that stuff a little bit deeper, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, no, I I think that's perfect. I think you and I share very similar philosophy. Like I said, most of the guys I work with are field athletes, whether it's football or soccer, lacrosse, but they all have the same basic needs, right? And while you do like you would train a basketball player and a football player, there's not different exercises you're doing for different players. There's different
Right.
emphasis that you're going to put and different stress that you're going to apply. But for the most part, it's the same thing. You're working on linear, you're working on change of direction, especially for soccer players. They're more endurance based, but they have to have those short bursts. So I like the flies a lot. We do a lot of the speed training, a lot of that stuff. And then it's just the movement patterns, right? It's the squat, the hinge, the push pull. I throw in the lunge as well. I know that's not kind of one of the pillars, but I think there's a lot of benefits to it. But and just letting them understand, kind of like you said, when they go home, like there are ways that you can accomplish this at home. I was the same way in high school. I didn't have access to a weight room. I came from a small school. Once school was over, the weight room was done. We couldn't access it. And so until you got to high school, you didn't have access to a weight room. So it's like, well, I don't have access to this, so I'm not going to do anything. And that's the worst way that you can approach it. And I think that once kids understand that there are ways that you can train your body outside of the gym, like, okay, Is an air squat the most effective way to get stronger? No, but it's going to build proper movement patterns. And if you can master the basics, if you do it enough, somebody watches you or you record yourself and you compare yourself to what the standard is, I think you're going to see like an increased level in your body for one, this, the overall change in muscularity just by mastering a basic movement.
Hmm.
And then you're going to feel a lot better once you do get to a kettlebell squat or a goblet squat or barbell squat, whether it be front or back, whatever. But I think that it's going to just raise your training age. And once kids can understand that I can do these things that maybe seem simple, and I master those. Like I had a kid who he was a junior soccer player, and this was 2 weeks ago. So we're in the preseason mode. And he's like, well, I need to be squatting X amount of weight. And I was like, why do you need to squat that? And he was like, well, that's kind of what my goal is. And I was like, your goal should be to squat a weight that you feel comfortable with and is going to keep you kind of where you need to be for the whole season. Like you'll get your baseline number, and then that's what we're going to base the whole season's numbers off of. Okay, so if you can back squat 185, we know we need to be right around there throughout the whole season. So that way your strength is, not decreasing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times kids get this misconception that I have to be the strongest I am before the season because I'm going to lose it all during the season. But if you have a proper program and you're going through the proper protocols, then that shouldn't be an issue. And the other part of it is I try to sneak in as much volume as I can um, with non-stressful exercises.
Hmm.
So we use a lot of bands. I come from kind of like the powerlifting background. So we use bands, not just with like the main lifts, but we use it for banded pull aparts, banded leg curls, things like that. And I love adding those to athletes because it's a very cheap tool. I mean, you can pick up a band for $6 or $8, and then you can do tricep work, you can do bicep work, you can do upper back stuff. I mean, it's easy to cheat the upper back volume by just adding some upright rows, some banded pull aparts, banded tears, things like that. And then if you can lie down and attach it to something and get banded hamstring curls out of it, like you're just going to gain so much from that volume because it's going to put you in a better spot. It's going to help strengthen your tissues. It's going to increase muscle size. It's going to increase your stamina, all that good stuff. And it's just like once kids understand that there's that option between just a body weight and a band, and you can become a better athlete, that's when you're going to start getting results in the weight room because you're not going to have that low training age when you show up on day one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one of the things that kids start to see is, they play so many sports, maybe at the high school level, and they transition to playing one in college is now you're letting progressive overload just take over, right? Because, figure in season, out of season, these kids are going to train for, mostly 16 weeks, give or take a couple of weeks with fall break, Christmas break, whatever. But they're going to train for 16 weeks of uninterrupted time, 2 or 3 times a week. That's probably the most consistent a lot of these kids have ever trained. So I mean, there's some pretty, impressive strides that these kids will make. And then once they start to see the adaptations that their body take, I think that's when they really start to buy in, which is pretty cool. So you're naturally, letting the strength and conditioning kind of like just take over and do its part. And these kids start to see some of the adaptations. Like I said, they're very happy with the results. And again, we're not reinventing the wheel with the exercises, right? We're just giving them a formulated plan that they can stick to. And I think sometimes it's interesting because we do write these plans for them. And then when it is time to go home, if they don't have the plan right away, they freeze up. It's like, that's where the education comes in. It's like, hey, I want you to be able to run your own program if you were, stuck in a spot. And, those are the texts that kind of mean the most to me sometimes where kids are like, hey, I got caught up. I only had a kettlebell, but put this together. What do you think? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's great. Something's better than nothing, right? And the fact of the matter is, like, you've kind of gone down the list of stuff that we've done in the past, and you're using your memory to be like, hey, we've done this exercise in the weight room. I can use this. That's the stuff that makes me happy. So I get a lot of those texts sometimes over Christmas break, over spring break, because they might not have as formulated a strength plan, or they might not have the equipment available to them. So I think it's pretty cool when you get stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the common saying in like the team sports is you always resort back to your lowest level.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing with training. Like if you know nothing about training, but you were taught the basic body weight movements, the push, the pull, the squat, the hinge, things that you can do with just body weight or maybe a kettlebell because that's what you have, and the banded stuff, and you can kind of understand how you can create your own workout. And just like you said, something is better than nothing. And if you're mastering those movements and still putting volume in that way, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we're on a good topic here, but would you mind if we shifted to just talk about maybe coaching style? I'd love to hear kind of your coaching style. I know we talked about this over the phone last week, but we kind of just breeze over the coaching style and what you feel like your philosophies are, and maybe some things you've learned along the way or some things that haven't worked as well for you.
Yeah, my coaching philosophy has always been pretty straightforward. I want to be the guy that I wish I had when I was in high school, because my coaches were always a little bit older, or maybe not like coaching because they loved coaching. Um, I definitely had some great coaches that I look up to from my childhood, but like I said, I'm from a small town. We sports weren't like great. And so the coaches were just kind of like a teacher or a dad or somebody like that. Um, and they never really taught us about training or anything like that. So I always wanted to be kind of like the big brother of, hey, this is what I've experienced and this is the knowledge that I've picked up post my playing career. Now I'm going to teach you this, and hopefully you can take your career further than I can. Um, and I think the best way to do that is just by being an honest coach. Like if a kid comes up to me and he says, "Hey coach, here's my squat. How did this look?" I'm doing him a disservice if I say, "Oh yeah, man, it was great. You should go up by 40 pounds." Um, but I think that when you have that open relationship with them and you're honest and you kind of give them the feedback that they need, not just that they want, I think that they respect that a lot and they'll start to kind of like basically just do whatever you say, because they trust you. And when a youth athlete has trust in you as an older mentor, an older adult, that's when you have the winning formula, because then you can kind of speak to them and say, hey, instead of going up in weight, why don't we take a step back and we'll master the basics of whatever. If it's we're playing a sport and I say, hey, instead of looking to do this miraculous play, let's take it back and do something more simple. They'll be like, okay, well, this makes more sense. And it's the same thing in the weight room. And I think it just applies to everything when you can build that trust with guys, or girls. I think that's when you find the winning formula, because so many coaches out there want to just be like the X's and O's. And it's like, I love the sport. I want to coach it. This is how I'm going to do it. And I think a lot of things get lost in translation. And it's like, you're more just servicing the needs of your athletes and less being a sport coach. I always like to say that I could step in, and I'm a soccer coach, but I could step in and be a basketball coach or a baseball coach because I understand the sport. But most
Right.
most importantly, I understand the kids.
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing. And I think that gets lost a lot because you have guys who, I played soccer my whole life. I understand the game. Well, that's great. But if you can't communicate that to kids and they don't want to play for you, then you're not going to be successful. Um,
Yeah.
what is
No,
what is your coaching style like?
yeah, I mean, my coaching style is definitely adapting. And you said, like, I had some really good coaches growing up, from the younger level to the high school level, even at the college level. But I also had coaches that, I couldn't stand. Um, but you kind of just take, little pieces from everyone. Like, hey, I would never want to be like that guy or girl. Hey, I really like the way that person coaches. But then you kind of got to develop your own philosophy. But for me, I'm just heavy on the relationships. I'm huge on relationships. Like you said, I think relationships for the most part is one of the number one, proponents of building that coaching philosophy. Because if the kids don't trust you, right, they're not going to buy into it. And for us here at Villanova, we tell them kids all the time, we want to be the best hour of your day. Like, I know not every kid loves training. I'll raise my hand and tell you, hey, on some of these teams, there's probably 5 to 10 that love training. But if I can make this, a fun atmosphere for you guys, a safe atmosphere for you guys, and you guys are able to see the benefits of actually training, you're going to get some buy into it. And for me, I'm not a yeller. I know we've talked about this before. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. There's a time and place for it for me to get on people. But really, the only time I'm going to get loud with people is when it comes to their safety, right? If you're in the weight room or on the field and you're screwing around and someone can potentially get hurt from it, that's the time I'm going to raise my voice. But for other than that, I like to have the jokes with the kids. I like to have the conversation with the kid. I think I get my greatest feedback from kids is when they tell me last week they had a test on Tuesday, and I follow back up on Wednesday and say, hey, how'd your test go yesterday? Or, they're whatever, went home this weekend. I asked, hey, how's the family doing? How was your trip home? So that's when you really start to build these relationships. And that's when these kids know that you care about them more than just as a strength coach, right? You actually care about them as a person. And that's when they really start pouring into you. And I think that's when your coaching style can become really strong. But again, what's nice at the college level too is it's not always just one coach on the floor, because there's been a handful of athletes in my time here that I'm just not able to get through to. My style doesn't work for them, but the other coach that's on the floor with me, like they connect or they gel way better, and that's what's great about having interns, assistant coaches on the floor, because I can bang my head against the wall and be like, man, I want to get to this person. It's bothering me because I'm such a relationship person, but it's just not going to work out. So you let the other person take over, and they have a really good relationship with them, and then you're able to kind of gel that. It's all about the team. So for me, if I want to go like think about my philosophy, it's always safety first. Um, I want to have respect of my peers. I want them to respect others. I want to treat them like grown men and grown women. And then for me, it's just have fun. I want the kids to have fun. Like I said, not everyone loves it, but I want them to understand what the hard work's all about. Because I think, not just the training and in the weight rooms for that, but a lot of this relates to life, right? Like not everything's gonna be easy, right? You might not love this now, but there's a reason why we're doing it. And if I can get you to understand that, just like in life, like, hey, some things might not go your way, just like sport, you might not be starting, but someone gets hurt, you're in, maybe you make the winning goal or something like that. Like things are going to go your way if you keep doing the right thing every day, just keep showing up. So I just try and preach to these kids that, hey, keep working hard, keep your head down, make sure you're having fun here. When you have a bad day, be transparent with us. Let me know, right? I'll try and make sure that we can make your day a little bit better. And we just want to be a collective group as a whole, as a coaching staff, like I said, make these kids have a good time in the weight room.
Yeah, and something that you touched on that's super important. There are no shortcuts in life and there are no cheat codes in life, but the number one thing that you can do to create an advantage is to actually care about somebody. When you
Mm-hmm.
actually care about the kids, they know. So if I care about this kid and I say, "Hey, when you go home, you don't have access to a weight room, it's the summer break or whatever. This is what I want you to do." They're going to believe you because they know that you care about them and you care about their best interest. And when they don't feel that, because I felt that, and it sounds like you felt that with our coaches
Mm-hmm.
at certain times, it's like, hey, in the off season, I had a soccer coach tell me to run 7 miles a day. And I'm like, you just pulled that number out of a hat. You don't
No
care that
doubt.
I run 7 miles. And I never ran 7 miles. I was a goalie. I was like, I'm not running 7 miles. And I showed up and he's like, did you run 7 miles every day? I was like, yep. And he was like, okay, good. And he didn't care that I actually was running the miles, and I didn't care that he knew I wasn't running the miles. It was a very dysfunctional relationship, but there are so many of those out there because the coach has a goal of, I need to win X amount of games. I need to win a playoff game or a championship or whatever it is. And you get away from the root reason of why you're there. And it's to make kids better humans. And that starts with just caring about them. It goes beyond athletics, but if you actually care about the kids, they will do extraordinary things to make sure that they make you happy. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's the
Absolutely.
one thing, like just proving to them. Like for instance, last night I took one of my players to a soccer game, and we just had a good conversation. But he texted me thanking me for taking him everything. And it's like you don't know where they're getting their care from outside of the sport, right? You don't know what their family life is like. You don't know what their friendships are like, anything like that. And if you can't be anything else for these kids, maybe you can't lead them to a state championship, but you can show them what true care looks like, and they will go to battle for you all day long. And that's the most important thing. You touched on it. Because you'll get those texts from the guys or girls like, hey, went home for the break and I did this, and that's all thanks to you. And that just shows that you care about them and they care about you as well. And that's one of the most magical feelings of being a coach.
Yeah. And I think another topic that we can touch on, not in this episode, but bridging the gap between sport coach and strength coach, or performance coach, whatever you want to call us. But that's always an interesting one. And in my time here, it's gotten better each year. But obviously, we have certain philosophies that we want to have, and they have certain philosophies they want to have. And even you talk about like going into football camp is, the first thing the coaches want to do is they want to put the pads on and go hard right away. It's like, well, are we ready for that? Things like that. So we'll touch on that in later topics, and I'd love to hear maybe some of the fans kind of reach out and some of the things they've, gone through, or some of the things they've heard when they've been in, similar positions as a position coach or as a strength coach, or maybe at some levels you're kind of both. So it'd be really interesting. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think this is, a great starting episode. I don't know if you have any closing remarks or anything else you'd want to touch on, but I thought this was awesome.
Yeah, Colin, it was great to finally be able to sit down and just kind of get this done. I know, we've been talking about it for a while. It was a good kind of overview on how you do things, background of you, and kind of what you got going on, and kind of our philosophies as a coach. So I think it'll allow us to kind of expand, do a deeper dive with some more um, specific topics here in the future. But no, I just enjoyed it, and thank you for your time, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Best of luck to you guys out there. Hopefully, I can stop out there soon. And like I said, we'll get on a cadence here, whether it's every week, every other week, maybe once a month, and we'll kind of see what the fans are asking for.
Absolutely, Colin. Thank you. This has been the Max Effort Athlete Podcast. We are out. Peace.
Peace.
I'll have him cut it, but how do you think that
Cool.
went?
I think it was good. I think I was a little bit stiff in the beginning, just trying to learn it out. It's different because I've been on podcasts before where I'm just the person that's getting asked questions, but I want this to be more of a free flowing where it's I'm asking questions and you're asking questions, and I think I'll get more comfortable with that as we kind of discuss a little more. But overall, like it's fun, man. It is fun just to kind of
Yeah.
talk and get tidbits out there. There's gonna be parts that we hated. There's gonna be parts that we like, and like I said, we can snippet little things that we like in there and build off them and get feedback from people. I think it's just gonna grow.
Yeah. This is weird, but like my worst thing about doing podcasts is I always get my mouth gets super dry and I'll start talking
Yeah,
over my words, and I'll like be trying to talk and I'm thinking about what I'm talking about, and then my mouth will get like super sticky and I'm like, I have no idea what I was saying, and then I'll just be on like a tangent. So I have to like watch it because that happened a couple times, and like you said, I was super stiff, but like
yeah,
the one-on-one stuff is a lot harder for me than the coaches clinic because I just sit on the coaches clinic and like they'll
hmm
ask me a question every now and then, or I'll just like interject, but like leading it is kind of difficult. You did a good job of playing that role today. And then we had like some weird technical difficulty. I don't know where Kyle went, who does our podcast stuff, but
yeah,
I don't know if it was like it for you, but there was like a weird period where it like went out and I couldn't hear you that well and it's kind of distorted.
yeah.
So I don't know if that happened when you're in too.
It's on my end. It definitely is. I'm usually in the I'm usually in the golf simulator where it's kind of nice. I'm upstairs in the press box right now. You could see me again. I was like sweating it's hot as shit in here right now. But I'm usually in an air conditioned room, which is nice. And I've kind of told the coach I'm going to use that room for every Monday for now. But they're actually doing maintenance down there. They're fixing the ceiling. So I walked in there. I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. So I'm up
Uh,
here. So I shouldn't have any issues with it because I'm on the Wi-Fi. But I guess I don't know if it's just shitty up here or not. But I saw it cut out at one point. I'm like, oh man, I'm just gonna stay on and we'll see if it
yeah,
kind of works itself out. But
it is
yeah,
what it
it's
is.
good.
People aren't going to get pissed about that, but I didn't know if it was like on my end or if it was like a StreamYard deal, and it was like weird. It was like kind of distorted. And I was like, I don't want to like stop you from what you're saying, but like
Yeah,
I couldn't hear you, but I was like, well, maybe it's okay on the other end. But it is what it is because it like came back, and I think all your talking points still got through, but
okay.
the visual probably won't match up because that's how it looked on my end. Like you were frozen, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
frozen, but your voice was still kind of coming through. So I think especially like the audio will be okay.
Okay.
Clips, you just won't clip like anything from that
That's
period.
fine.
But I think we have enough content that we should be fine. But
No, I think it's good. And like I said, here's the thing for me is like I've always wanted to do this, and the
mhm,
fact that we're just doing it, we're
yeah.
just gonna get better at it. And that's what's fun. It's like, hey, whether we have one listener or zero listener, it doesn't matter to me. We're gonna get better at it, which is super fun. And yeah, once we kind of get on the cadence, like I always just have shit going through my head of like ideas and stuff. So I'll shoot you texts and whatnot. If you want to talk about stuff, great. If not, we don't have to. But I'm very transparent, very open about what I do with my own training, with what I do with my teams. So any questions are pretty much fair game for me.
Yeah, and I had no expectation. I was like, we'll just go
Yeah,
in and we'll let the conversation take it to wherever it needs to go. I was
yeah,
like, we talked on the phone for almost an hour the other day. Like, we'll figure something to talk about. Like,
no doubt.
I asked Danny, who does our email marketing, I was like, is there anything you want to see? Like, because he sends out the emails of
Yeah,
like all the articles and stuff. And he's like, maybe some like programming stuff. He's like, but really all the athlete stuff does well. So he's like,
yeah,
whatever you want to talk about. And I was like, so that's why we kind of slipped that in. But
yeah. It's good.
yeah, overall it was good.
It
Um,
was good. What's
but
the
yeah,
rest
man,
of the day looking like?
I have to call the guy who I interviewed the first time, Coach Burr. He's the strength coach for the Indianapolis Indians. They're trying to get some amino recovery. I got a
Oh,
couple
nice.
NIL things I got to look at. Because like we do NIL stuff, but that space is really strange.
Well, it's so uncharted waters right now.
Yeah, so you don't know
Very
how to
interesting.
do it. Like, you don't know
No,
what's a good offer, what's a bad offer. And, like, to be 100% honest with you, man, like, I don't know that like, I think the athlete content like this is more important than having athlete brand reps
no doubt, no doubt.
because unless it's Joe Burrow, like, I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
this kid from, like so, like, Ohio State obviously is close by, and you have
yeah.
guys, hundreds of $1,000 deals, and it's like,
Hmm.
how are you getting any money out of that? I understand that those guys are really good at football and they're really good at what they do, but how are they giving you money? Um, and so
I don't
like,
understand it.
but the thought process from a kid standpoint, and we could talk about this too, maybe future episode. These kids think they're worth so much money. They're like,
Oh,
well, you need to give me like there's an app called Open Doors, and I they can put how much they want to make per post. Some of these kids are asking like $10,000 a post. Like, no, I'm not gonna make $10,000 off of that sounds mean to say, like, I'm not making money off of you, but like, I mean,
that
that's
matters.
the goal. Like, the goal of
Yes,
bringing these athletes in is to make money off of their name, image, and likeness. That's why we're paying you. And it's like,
100%.
how much how much am I gonna make off of you just by posting you? Or you posting a picture with us? Probably not a ton. Um,
No.
and that's really annoying because it's like you don't want to ruin that relationship and be like, sorry, you're not worth it. But at the same time, it's like I don't know if they have anybody in their corner that's kind of saying like you're not really worth it.
Yeah, you guys need you guys have such a loyal backing, but you just need a loyal guy who's willing to do it for almost nothing, right? It's like, hey,
And
that's what you want.
that's what we do. We did a deal with Ohio University football. I have 4 guys reach out to me that want to do like an NIL deal, but they all understand like, hey, we're football players at OU. If you give us a discount code that we can maybe get our friends to buy and we're going to get a little bit of money back and you give us free product, we're cool. And it's like
That's a win.
that's how
Yeah,
everybody should be because that's a win for everybody.
that's
But when you
fair.
start discussing like the contract deals, like the Savannah Bananas, we have a couple guys, and it's just a product deal. And I'm like, honestly, they're more valuable than a lot of these college athletes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what level of baseball is that?
so they have a minor league team that
Okay.
plays throughout the summer, and then they have that like specialty league that you see on ESPN and all that stuff. I
Yeah,
watched games, super cool, super intriguing, kept my interest. Um, but it's like a different they have a minor league team that plays
yeah, yeah,
that stadium. Like it's cool.
yeah.
I actually bought the book by uh the guy who founded it. I'm gonna mess up his name, but I think it's Jesse Norris. But he has 2 books. He has Fans Come First and then Find Your Yellow Tux. And he kind of just explains like the business methodologies behind it. Um, but yeah, it's like a low level. I don't think it's single A. It might be like rookie ball.
Yeah,
But that's kind of
yeah.
like the thing. And then they do the thing where you see the guys pitching on stilts and all that stuff.
How far is Ohio State from you guys?
15 minutes.
Oh, really? It's that close. I was my buddy's a strength coach there, and my college roommate was like, "Hey, he was at Cincinnati last year. You guys tickets to the Cincinnati Bama game." He's
Oh
like,
wow.
"Text him see if he even gets tickets to the Ohio State Notre Dame game." When is that? Isn't that is that next
September
weekend?
3rd.
Damn, that's soon. I should text him. I might text him and be like, "Hey, if you have any tickets available, I'd gladly come."
Corey will be there because it's Labor Day weekend because Corey has
Yeah,
season tickets. Um, I'm not going. I don't like Ohio State. Cole, who's sitting in here, he went to Ohio State. He's
yeah,
a Ohio State fan. I'm not an Ohio State fan. OU has a home game, so I'll be at the OU game that day. But if you end up coming in that weekend, obviously you can come kick it and chill. Like Saturday
yeah.
night, obviously you wouldn't be available anyway, so it wouldn't matter. But
Right, right.
yeah, if you
Yeah,
want to. Does he know who so we have a guy who is like we'll call him like a friend of the show. He's a friend of Max Effort, but his name's Anthony Schlegel. Um he was a strength coach for Ohio State for a while and then
yeah,
with Urban Meyer to the Jaguars. And then when
yeah.
he got fired, he's just kind of like doing his own thing now.
He's the
Um
guy that has the difference thing, the difference
yeah,
pack.
yeah, he made that company.
Yeah.
So he'll come in and train all the time because he's from Columbus.
Okay.
Super good dude. But your buddy will probably know him.
Sure.
I don't know anybody else that's on the Ohio State staff. We know a
Yeah. I
couple
mean,
coaches.
what's up? What'd you say there?
We know a couple of the sport coaches.
Oh,
Um,
gotcha.
like there's a baseball coach. We had one of the baseball coaches on the podcast, and they got fired. But one of the guys is staying around
Oh, wow.
because they cleaned house with their baseball team. They
Oh,
fired
actually,
him.
my buddy told me that. Yeah, my buddy's at TCU. He's interviewing a bunch of places. He's young, but he's interviewing a bunch of places right now. Um, it's a crazy world, man. College sports, crazy world.
No part of me wants any of that because you can
Yeah,
be gone in the
we're
blink
at a
of an
sweet spot here. I'm at a sweet spot because I work with so many. If the lacrosse coach gets fired, which they have since I've been here, like I'm not getting fired, which is kind of nice. But at the same time, there's still not. You can't make the big chunk of change that you'd like to make as a big time strength coach because you go there for 3 years and get fired. But I got a bunch of buddies across the country that are with big time teams, just like, man, they've been moving around like crazy. It's crazy, man. It really is crazy, but it's a cool field to be in. It's just my heart's not in it to be like, I want to go run out of a tunnel in front of 100,000 people, which is great, but I got to work 16-hour days, 7 days a week, so it's
yeah.
brutal.
And
It's brutal.
the strength coach at OU, he only covers football. The dude, he's had 7 jobs in 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first job that he's been at he's been there for 3 years now. He's like, this is the
Oh, wow.
longest place I've ever been. And
It's
like, okay,
crazy.
do the math, 7 places in 8 years. You're at some places less than a year.
Yeah.
It's like you might be there for a season and then you're gone. He's like, I'm sleeping on people's floors. He's like doing whatever I can because like you don't make a ton of money, so you can't afford like
No.
all that stuff. Is just like that's a crazy world that I don't want any piece of.
How was your guys' visit back to Ohio for you? Was it cool?
It was super cool, man. The players are super respectful. We know the DB coach really well. He comes here and trains. A good friend of Dustin's, and now kind of all of ours through Dustin. And then their strength coach is super cool. And dude, like just the most respect for us and what we do. So that was cool. Because you know how it is. You get a bunch of 18 to 22-year-old kids, and like sometimes they're assholes, but dude, like we passed out a copy of Corey's book to everybody, and they were all
That's
thankful.
cool.
They posted on social media. They were like very thankful. You know, they paid them a lot of respect. I thought Corey's speech was phenomenal. And yeah, it was really good, man.
That's awesome. We went up to I went up with the lady at Penn State to actually teach some of the NIL stuff. She has a whole like that's what she does for a living. She kind of like preaches about an education about it. And we went to Penn State and talked to their team, but it was on I forget what weekend it was. I think it was the last week of summer training for these kids. So they're all going home the next couple of days. So none of the coaches were there anymore. So it's just the director of football operations. She was running the whole thing. And again, they're 18 to 20-year-old kids. They were fine, but like not that respectful. I'm like, God, man,
Really?
like they were like decent, but at the same time, like, when people are saying like be quiet, like still talking, it's like, dude, just shut the fuck up. It's not that hard. Just be
Really?
respectful. I hate that. I hate that stuff. When people are talking, when other people are talking, I'm like, dude, and that's why I think the head coach should be there. Be like, listen, that shit doesn't fly here. Like we have
Mm-hmm.
someone coming in, whether you're paying for it or not. And they were paying for it, but they're paying for it. It's like a decent chunk of change too.
Yeah.
And kids are just like dicking around. It's like it's so great. But that's why when a guy like Corey comes in, like close to home for these guys can kind of relate to it. I'm sure because like you're playing in Ohio. Like, listen, it's a great school, but at the same time, it's not Ohio State, right?
No. Yeah.
So they know it's hard hat mentality around there,
Yep.
and they respect what you guys have done and what you guys have built. So it's like you're sitting at that level where it's really kind of nice to speak to. Some of these kids are too, they have everything handed to them, and if
Yeah.
they're not interested, they're just disrespectful. But it was a good experience, but it's crazy what these kids have. We got there, whole row of like their whatever auditorium for football, water bottles and Gatorades at the corner of every aisle for the kids. They just grab them as they want. They had food before and they had a snack after. I'm like, what is this world you guys live in, man? What is this world you guys live in? Like some of those kids have some big NIL deals. Like their running back has a huge one. I think he got like over $100,000 worth of NIL deals. And it's just like, what are you doing with that money? He's like, I went and bought this chain, had this huge fucking chain on. I'm like, why, dude? Why? But
So
it's interesting.
that's the next iteration of it where you see these documentaries about guys going broke. I
Mm-hmm.
think these kids aren't going to go broke because they're $100,000 is a lot of money, and especially to them
Yeah.
at that age, it's a lot of money. But they're going to blow it, so it doesn't really mean anything. But like they're going to get in trouble, and I think it's going to take away a little bit of their drive to like be successful and get to the next level because everyone's always like, okay, I'm going to grind my college and then I'm going to get to the pro so I can get that contract. If you're getting paid $100,000 to be a running back at Penn State, like how hard are you really working?
Yeah.
And,
Plus, you're
and
taking.
maybe he's a great kid, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he could see that and be like, okay, I want more, but
Sure.
like
Yeah.
you have kids buying things that they shouldn't be buying.
You're taking power away from some of the coaches too, right? Like the whole thing is like the coach is your coach. Like he makes more money than you. He's older than you. Like he's been here, but it's like, bro, you make $100,000. Like at some schools, you're making more than some of the coaches are,
Yep.
And then it's like, and that's the issue you run into in the NFL a little bit with some of the strength coaches we've heard. It's just like, hey, guy's worth $18 million. Hey, you coming in for lift today? Nah, coach, I'm good. Just find me. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But I
Ex-
was watching the Ravens game last night, and Lamar Jackson shouted out his trainer. I don't know who the guy is, so there's no like disrespect for the guy. But I was like, I'm looking this guy up, bro. It's just some random guy that lives in Maryland. It's probably a buddy of his.
Oh,
Lamar
for sure.
Jackson is so talented, right? But like the training he was doing was so garbage. He's just doing like sit ups. Like it's just like I'm like, this guy is such a talent. Like, please don't screw him up. And he shouted this guy. I'm like, you can't find someone better. You can't go to the facility and train there all summer. No, I'm going to bring this guy with me. It was just crazy. I'm like, God damn, the guy's going to sign a 23, $24 million contract for a year.
One of the guys that I want to talk to, and I have never brought this up to him. So Joe Burrow is from Athens, and that's where Ohio
Okay.
University. Have you ever been to OU
I've
for
never been
anything?
to OU. No, no.
Um, yeah, because I don't. We played in a basketball tournament with Villanova, but it was in
Okay.
Myrtle Beach.
Gotcha.
So Joe Burrow's from Athens. His dad was a defensive coordinator while I was there. So he coached with
Okay.
Frank Coach for a long time, and he was the DC. Well, there was a kid who played football at OU while I was there, and then he became the head strength coach for football after we graduated, which is kind of strange, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Super nice guy. When Burrow made it to the league, he left. His girlfriend or his wife played soccer at OU. She was a sideline reporter for the Columbus Crew. She got a job with Cincinnati when they became a Major League Soccer team. And so she moved and he was still living in Athens. And so he kind of was like, hey, I'm trying to find my way out. And now he works at like a private facility in Cincinnati, but he's Joe Burrow's trainer. And Joe Burrow shouted him out on, it was like ESPN or something like that.
Yeah.
But like I have a personal relationship with him, but I've never really like been like, hey, can we talk? Like, can I talk to you about being Burrow's fucking trainer? Like, that's sick. And I
Sick.
still never have, but like he and I are cool. Like we went to a golf outing together. We got invited to the OU alumni football golf outing, which was super cool. Burrow's dad was there. And I met Joe Burrow a few weeks later and I told him about the golf outing. He's like, oh yeah, I was supposed to go and I just decided not to. I was like, well, that would have been fucking cool.
That would be cool.
But yeah, his trainer, he's legit. He, played college football, super cool. So he's a guy that I want to like have on and we could like interview him, but I've never really like mustered up the courage to be like, hey, like
Yeah.
yeah, lean into that relationship because like we know each other, super nice. And he every time I see him, he's like, whatever you need. Like I'm going to Cincinnati this weekend for a soccer game and he's gonna be there. So we're gonna meet up. But it's always been kind of like that.
Yeah.
Uh more of a friendship, even though we're not super close, but not anything like associated with Joe Burrow. And I don't know
Yeah.
if he would be weird about that if I was like, hey, can we interview about you being like Burrow's trainer or like how he would respond to that. So I've treaded that water a little lightly, but
Yeah.
would be
Might as well
cool.
just pitch it at some point, whatever. If he
Yeah,
says no,
because
whatever. Yeah.
there's a lot of those guys who just go to trainers who suck, but it's their buddy. And it's like,
No doubt.
you're
No
not
doubt.
getting better. Like, watch the stuff that Patrick Mahomes does in the offseason. Probably not
Oh yeah.
great. That guy probably doesn't push him that hard, and he probably enjoys that because it's his downtime and he's not getting any worse. He's not getting hurt. So why change anything?
Yeah. I've talked to his trainer, not a ton. We've like DM'd on Instagram and stuff. He's an interesting cat. He's super fucking smart, but he's been training Mahomes since he was like 12.
I've heard that he's actually really good. That was a terrible example, but I
No,
heard.
no. I know what you're saying. Yeah, but he had a come up with Burrow. I mean, with Mahomes. Like Mahomes made a name for himself, and then this whole APEC thing kind of took off. Now they were already training elite level guys in
Yeah,
baseball, but it kind of like just took off because like now it's Mahomes is training. Like, what are you doing? It's so special. Like, well, Mahomes is super fucking talented.
yeah,
I just happen to work with him. But yeah, it's interesting, man. It's interesting. You get one good athlete or a guy you work with, and it can kind of just take your career off a little bit and just put you out there. I saw the guy from Texas who runs the Collect. You know Collective Inc.
I do.
They
Yeah,
work. So I saw that like Leonard Fournette came in like 25 pounds overweight. I don't know if
yeah,
that's true or not, but he was posting all summer that he works down the Collective. I'm like, is there like conflict of interest here? Like, do they want him bigger? Because the team obviously doesn't want him bigger. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So it's interesting, man. It's interesting. But hearing from the NFL strength coaches, I went out to Seattle not that long ago and talked to their guys. Like, we're pretty much hands off in the off season. Like, the guys want to come in and train, we can do it, but it's all optional. Like, we can't force anyone. And he's like, obviously, some guys are around, but it's all based on culture of the team. You know, some guys just no one wants to live in Seattle in the summer. Just they don't want to be there. They all go back home, and then there's obviously destination places where like Miami, like I'm sure the Dolphins team's probably down there training because you're in Miami already. So why not?
right. Where else are you gonna go?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
we'll
funny you
see.
mentioned Mahomes because Blake DeSell actually knows that guy who's trained Mahomes.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I don't know how well, but
Interesting.
he told me he's like, yeah, he's like, it's one of my guys, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
That is
but yeah,
interesting.
we have a guy. Um, we should interview him, but he's a 4M crew guy, and he was a scout for the Browns, and then he's like, I want to be a strength coach, and then through the connection with Schlegel, he went and was like with the Jags for the 1 year that Schlegel was there, and he said the same thing. He's like, he was in charge of like some like recovery room, and he's like, dude, I had like 6 players use it all year.
Hmm.
Like, what?
They
Like
all go outside.
they don't care.
No,
Um,
they pay for their own guys. It's
yeah,
crazy.
but they're paying a buddy to help them and kind of feed their ego and not push them too hard because the
No
actual
doubt.
strength coach is going to make them put in a little bit of work.
No doubt. I listened to the Brian Peters podcast with Coach Kavanaugh. Did you listen to that one?
I haven't listened to it yet.
It's good. Coach He's a straight shooter. It's a
Is
good
that the
one.
one that came out like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, because
It,
I'm a
it
few
was
weeks
good.
behind. I usually listen to the Serrano ones a couple of times because my head doesn't uh, understand a lot of those words, so it's like I gotta listen to this one a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah. I'll shoot you over the podcast list to this morning.
Okay,
I know it's long, but you might find some value. And like I said, you kind of just chip away at it. It's good enough where you don't need to listen to it one shot. It's like kind of free flowing. You can stop it, pick it back up, stop, pick back up, but it'll be good. So yeah, let me know about this stuff. If there's any
okay,
good stuff that comes out of it, sound
I'll show.
bites, whatnot. I'm willing to post stuff, whatever it needs, and then we can kind of get on a cadence for shit. If you want to do 2 in 1 week sometime because something's like a hot topic, if we want to do one every the week, doesn't matter to me. We kind of
Okay,
just text and free flow. We could even build like a backlog of whatever information and videos, and then kind of just post them as we need to.
yeah, I think that's smart, and like I said, like we have full-time podcast guy here, so as long as nobody's in the chair, like we're good. Which Corey usually does. We do coaches clinic Wednesday morning. Corey does his on Friday mornings, and then the wrestling strength that Dustin does kind of floats depending on when he can get the guests in, but like most of the time we're good.
Cool.
So
Sounds good
whatever.
to me.
All right, brother. Well, I
Sounds
appreciate
good.
your time.
You got it, man. Appreciate yours.
All right, thanks, Colin. Have a good day,
I'll
brother.
talk to you soon.
Yep. Peace.